Brother, I get the flamer. The heavy flamer. That's right. We're talking about a video from Ahoy, so listen, folks, please support the original content creator. We here at Americans Learn support that and say, please do that right away. My name is Kit. So, my favorite video game that portrayed the flamethrower was Turok 2, Seeds of Evil. Fun game for the Nintendo 64, but I know video games have improved graphics here and there, and of course that's why we got Warhammer 40k with the heavy flamer. That was another favorite weapon of mine. But we're here to find out about the flamethrower and its purpose in war, especially during World War II, because those infantrymen and those Marines that carried the flamethrower, you're made out of more courage and more grit than I ever will be, and I salute them who carry the flamethrower. And plus, my favorite scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where Leonardo DiCaprio's character is, hey, is there like a cooler setting on this? And the guy telling him, like, hey, it's a flamethrower. So you really can't have a cooler setting on a flamethrower, otherwise it'd be like one of those fire extinguishers. But nonetheless, let's enjoy this video in a 3, a 2, and an uno.
You are afraid. Amber lash of searing flame. Lungs filled with acrid smoke.
Yes.
You ought to be afraid.
Yes.
You're made out of meat.
Yes.
The flamethrower. A terrifying weapon
Can I interest you in propane and propane accessories?
capable of fiery devastation, and one so excessive it barely seems real. So, what practical purpose
Metal Slug, great game.
does such a weapon serve? Why is such a fearsome weapon so fascinating? And what sort of maniac would wield one?
Would you? Would you? Let's listen to that again one more time.
And what sort of maniac would wield one? And what sort of maniac would wield one? Fire has a long history. It's been used as a weapon since ancient times. And it's easy to see why. It's a destructive force that consumes all in its path, and all it needs is ignition. Greek fire is the first weapon that could be described as a flamethrower, a secret source of volatile compounds projected from ships in naval combat. It was used by the Byzantine Empire from the
Hail Rome.
7th century and could set the sea ablaze as well as enemy ships. It was a terrifying and effective weapon with profound impact. The modern flamethrower, as we know it today, was a German invention. The name flamethrower
Germania.
is a literal translation of Flammenwerfer. The invention is generally attributed to Richard Fiedler, a mechanical engineer from Berlin. While working on nozzle designs, he was struck by the prospect of spraying a flammable liquid, then igniting it to project a gout of flame.
Gee, buddy. That was a horrible thought to come up with, but all right.
His first flamethrower patent was granted in 1901, and by 1905, a working prototype was presented to the Prussian Engineering Committee for assessment. In 1908, Fiedler's flamethrower was assigned to the Pioneer Experimental Company in 2 forms. The Großflammenwerfer, or Grof, an emplaced weapon with a large tank, and the Kleine Flammenwerfer, or Kleif, a smaller backpack variant that could be carried. 1914 saw the outbreak of the First World War, and it was the winter of that year, in the Argonne, against the French, that these flamethrowers were first fielded.
Oh boy, hey, it's feeling cold out here. Wouldn't it be great if something would warm our soul? Oh no.
However, they didn't prove particularly effective.
Oh, thank goodness.
The Kleif was too fragile, too unwieldy, and did not maintain pressure.
Oh boy. Well, and then on the other hand, holy cow, feel sorry for the dude.
The Germans saw their potential, however, and established the Flammenwerfer Abteilung Redemann. a unit armed exclusively with flamethrowers, commanded by Bernhard Redemann, who had played a key
Bernhard. Redemann. Words that sound like fire, burning, red.
role in the technical development of the weapon. Their first attack was early in 1915, and they would see considerable subsequent deployment, including the Second Battle of Ypres and the Battle of Verdun. Some of the shortfalls of the Clive were addressed in 1917 with the introduction of the Wechselapparat, or VEX. It had a distinctive donut-shaped tank and was much lighter. During the war, Redemann's flamethrower troops carried out 653 attacks. 82% were deemed successful. Flamethrower attacks were risky.
Oh boy, that really... I feel sorry for you guys. On the
But they
receiving
could
end.
break through hardpoints and sap enemy morale like nothing else. So in the decades that followed, as the Second World War loomed, the flamethrower had not been forgotten, with many nations preparing their own implementation. The Germans replaced their earlier designs with the Flammenwerfer 41, yet lighter, more reliable, and easier to operate. The Brits had the Flamethrower Portable No. 2, which was a copy of the German Vex.
Okay.
The Italians had the Lancia Fiamma M40, the Japanese the Type 93 and Type 100, and the Soviets had the ROKS-2. The Americans
All right, here we go. USA.
introduced the M1 flamethrower in 1941, which used diesel oil or fuel oil. And the revised M1A1 in 1943 operated at a higher pressure to facilitate the use of napalm instead. By 1944,
What could go wrong?
the M1 was succeeded by the much superior M2, with improved regulation, ergonomics, and a new rotary cartridge ignition system. The M2 design was successful, so much so that it saw use after World War II, in Korea and even Vietnam.
Ugh. Boy, that fire sure is burning hot.
Although here it was supplanted by the more modern M9 design.
Hey, folks, if you had a relative during the Second World War or Korean War or Vietnam, if they were a flamethrower kind of guy, do they talk about it? Type in the comment section below. And that includes people overseas, too. Oh, boy.
Flamethrowers remained decisive weapons during the Second World War, but combat was evolving. Armoured tanks, more precise artillery, and aerial bombardment. In fact, by the latter part of the 20th century, the man-portable flamethrower was largely obsolete. Flame tanks offered a much safer way to clear out entrenched enemies, with none of the capacity or range restrictions a man-portable device might impose. Besides, these days it's much safer to just call in an airstrike than it is to attempt to burn them out.
Yep. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
So most contemporary use of the flamethrower is either for non-combat purposes, such as controlled burns or clearing land, or in cinema, television, and games. Here, the flamethrower has evolved into its own unique thing. Terrifying and imposing on screen, and rather than an infantryman, you're more likely to see it in the hands of an action hero, or a fictional supervillain.
Ah, yes. Hey, Homer. Italy or France? France. Ha, no one ever says Italy.
Like Hank Scorpio or Elon Musk.
Ah, boy. The boring company.
The flamethrower is rooted in its military origins, however, and most of its earliest appearances are in the hands of American soldiers. Think Porkchop Hill and Hell is for Heroes. It's not often shown in use during this era. Immolation was a little too grisly for 1950s Hollywood, so most shots are reverse angle, the heroes discharging flame towards the camera.
Yeah, because, people in the cinema weren't ready to see a burnt body.
Burning Nazis implied rather than shown. By the 1970s, there was a shift, when directors no longer shied from the horrors of war, showing its centre frame. The Deer Hunter is one of the more memorable depictions, focusing on the psychological effects of the Vietnam War. In games, wartime settings became popular with first-person shooters towards the end of the 90s. And although you won't find flamethrowers in the earliest examples, the weapon would soon become a staple part of their arsenal.
Come on.
Amongst the first was World War II GI, which was built on the Duke Nukem 3D engine and released in 1999.
Huh, I didn't know about this.
Call of Duty was hot on its heels, with the
There you
United
go.
Offensive
Yes.
add-on for the first game, featuring the German FLAMER 35. Treyarch, it seems, and their precursor Grey Matter Interactive have a bit of an affinity
Hey, where's Turok 2? Come on, where is it? Seems like no one remembers. Listen, Turok 2, when it came out, that was a game.
for flamethrowers.
And a cerebral board. Just want to throw that out there, too. The Phantasm reference.
American campaign in Call of Duty World at War takes place in the Pacific Theater, where there is copious deployment of the American M2 against Japanese fortifications.
Woo.
And the Black Ops series has flamethrowers as well, either as a weapon attachment or as part of a specialist loadout.
Cool. Very good.
Fair to say, then, that military shooters are a bit of a hotspot for flamethrowers. If it's a game set in either of the World Wars, or even Vietnam, then there's a fairly good chance you'll find one.
Beautiful.
They're not confined to military shooters, though. There is a considerable intersection between the war and horror genres.
Yes.
They share a common
Burn it!
psychological aspect. As terrible as it is, the flamethrower fits this union perfectly. It's
Yes.
a potent symbol of
Oh, StarCraft. StarCraft. That's right. Get those flamers. Get those flamers, man.
inhumanity, the depths to which conflict can drive us. I think for this
Burn it. Burn it all down.
reason we prefer to see such weapons used against inhuman enemies.
Yes.
Something for which we feel no empathy. Something dangerous enough to drive us to extreme measure.
Burn.
An early example is Them.
Ah, yes. That, for a movie set in that time era, it did freak me out as a kid when I first watched it.
A 1954 science fiction film where giant irradiated ants terrorize the United States. With the threat of widespread infestation, the only hope is to purge their nests, queen and all, with cleansing fire.
Oh, of course, aliens.
This is parallel to the Alien series, in which incinerator units play a prominent role and prove to be a reasonably effective weapon against the xenomorph threat. Not as effective as nuking the entire site from orbit, but it'll do
No, nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
in a pinch. The Alien franchise has exerted considerable influence on the sci-fi horror genre, and there's no shortage of games that take direct influence. Prominent amongst them are Bungie's. The Marathon trilogy features a flamethrower, first found in a level named Smells Like Napalm, Tastes Like Chicken.
Yes.
It's very satisfying to use against organic enemies. The high-pitched screams of the Thor as their scorched forms collapse is quite memorable.
good.
The Halo series features one too, of course. The Flood burn quite nicely.
Burn them. The only way to be sure. You gotta burn them. Make sure they're extra crispy.
Fire was used in a similar capacity in 1982's The Thing, with an insidious alien parasite masquerading as human. A flamethrower is the obvious solution. It seems they're a natural fit for horror sci-fi. So while the necromorphs from the Dead Space trilogy are best dismembered, the hydrazine torch remains effective.
Yes.
The Warhammer universe is no
Oh, my favorite game. Yes, Deathwing, or as I call it, Dashwing. Special Dashwing. Oh, man, I killed a lot of gene stealers. Hold on. 40, Emperor.
the hydrazine torch remains effective. The Warhammer universe is no stranger to the Flamer either. Where bullets fail, fire prevails.
Yes.
Many of the scariest monsters in science fiction are bulletproof. But
Ah,
fire consumes all.
burn it with fire.
The hell with
It is an indiscriminate force, burning friend or foe. Its alignment unarguably chaotic. For that reason, the flamethrower is sometimes used to denote a character or setting as anarchistic. Mad Max 2 serves as a good example of this, and a flamethrower-wielding maniac doesn't look out of place in any post-apocalyptic fiction.
No.
I think this goes some way to explaining the popularity in video games too. The sandbox paradigm that seeks to give the player freedom. You see that mountain? You can burn it.
Or like in Breath of the Wild. Well, there isn't a flamethrower, but you had the flame sword, flame arrows. You can set a mountain on fire.
The nature of fire-based weapons is particularly apt for emergent gameplay. Some games let you use fire as a tool of area denial, setting the environment alight. The Far Cry series is an excellent example, notably Far Cry 2, which introduced the flamethrower. A single spark can set swathes of savannah alight, whether you meant to or not. This adds a chaotic element to encounters, one which can be mastered and used to your advantage, but one that can easily get out of hand and place you in a difficult situation. I'm sad to say they toned it down slightly for the sequels.
Ah, boo.
But fire propagation remains present, and the flamethrower, a major part of Far Cry's charm.
Why would you be charging at him? I would be stop, drop, and roll your faces on fire.
One mission from Far Cry 3 is particularly memorable, in which you incinerate a drug crop, progressively becoming more affected by the fumes. Reminiscent of a similar task in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Another unifying trait of flamethrowers in video games is their ability to deal damage for a duration after the initial attack. The afterburn. Setting enemies alight might not kill them immediately, but once they're on fire, they'll suffer continuous damage, which might be enough to finish them off. This has significant tactical impact in games like Team Fortress 2. With the pyro, it's often best to hit and run.
Yes, Pyro, the crazy guy himself.
Than face your opponent to the bitter end. Let the fire do the work. Even in more realistic military shooters, similar ambush tactics play to the strength of the weapon. The luminous plume of the flamethrower attracts a lot of attention, so the less time you spend in the line of fire, the better.
The better, absolutely.
Once the novelty of the flamethrower wears off, however, it turns out that in many games, they are generally not very viable weapons. Sure, they're usually immensely powerful up close, but their range is always terrible, and ammunition very scarce.
Very minimum. Yeah.
This is exacerbated in multiplayer, where balance is key, and the flamethrower often made puny.
Hey. It's not the size, it's just the stroke.
This is sometimes addressed by having it as a killstreak reward, or as a strategic power weapon that must be captured. But even so, they remain a difficult class of weapons to use effectively. To be fair, this mirrors the real world. Flamethrowers are only needed in niche roles, and carrying one makes you a priority target for the...
Yes, of course, because your backpack or your tank will be target one.
Enemy. And it's hard to blame them. Who wants to be burnt alive? The flamethrower is a frightful weapon that plays to our most primal fear. Born of grim necessity, it is an illumination of horror. Fire is a savage beast, and yet we think ourselves its master. But be warned, the barbecue's hot, and you're in season. The flamethrower. Incendiary. Intimidating. Infernal.
So, can I interest you in propane and propane accessories? Come on, after all, buy Kit's flamethrowers. They'll make sure that if you have to sweep the floors will be nice and swept with that nice charcoal burnt smell in the morning. We are not responsible for houses or territory or pieces of land being caught on fire. How you use the flamethrower is up to you. But, okay, what are your thoughts on the flamethrower? Beautiful weapon, scary weapon, crazy weapon. A weapon that just causes more harm than good. What are your thoughts? Type in the comment section below. Let us know. But I thought this video was a lot of fun. Very interesting to check out. This is, again, video from Ahoy. So ahoy to ahoy. But, you know, my goodness. Hold on. I'm reading one of the comments here. Where do you put the bayonet? Louis Burrell, Chesty Puller, Marine Corps officer in World War II when presented with the flamethrower. Where do you put the... Only Chesty. Only good old Chesty Puller would ask, where do you put the bayonet at? Because not only are you getting caught on fire, you're going to get stabbed with a hot knife. A hot knife that'll go through human flesh. What are your thoughts on the flamethrower? Let us know.